Welcome back, it's me Lou, and I'm here for a different kind of video. So, lately I've had this itch to make a new custom action figure, and I kind of want to make this. I kind of want to make the DC character, the Warlord, but I kind of want to create him in the image of a modern Masters of the Universe Origins action figure. So what prompted me to do this is that I've always been familiar with the character. It's not a character I necessarily followed, but I always kind of knew of the Warlord. I knew that he existed. I knew he was a DC dude. And I also knew that back in the day, he actually had a Remco action figure that's done very much in the style of the vintage, old, classic Masters of the Universe figures from the 80s. So back in the 80s, Remco, they made a line of action figures that, were done in the same style as He-Man. The Lost World of the Warlord, that was a line of action figures they did. And they were the same height of the He-Man figures. They're about 5.5 inches tall. Their proportions were very similar. The engineering, I think, was slightly different, because I think whereas the Masters of the Universe figures had the rubber, kind of like the rubber bands that held the legs to the crotch piece, I believe these were more so plastic. I think they had plastic joints, which were more durable. Remco also made a line of wrestling action figures using this body style, and those were the AWA wrestling figures. So those lines of action figures were based off of the American Wrestling Association, which was a promotion back in the 80s and 70s. And for that line of action figures, they had figures like the Road Warriors, which I do have actually. Maybe one day I'll do a video review on them. I think there was like Rick Martel, there were the Freebirds. I think they made it with Jimmy Garvin, Steven Regal, the Long Riders, and some other characters from that era of, time period of the 80s. But this is the guy I want to make. I want to make the Warlord. I think he looks cool, and he's the perfect subject to make for a Masters of the Universe Origins figure. And I just love everything about this design. I love the package here. It's cool. It has the old DC logo, which I think is iconic. I don't know why they keep on changing the logo every so often, but this, for me, that's always going to be the DC logo. I love that the Warlord's logo, it's on a scroll. The figure looks cool. It looks like something you could easily, throw into your line of He-Man figures and not know any better. It's awesome. He has this cool helm with wings on it. He has this kind of like zebra pattern trunks and a cape. He's complete with accessories, fully posable. He comes with a sword. You collect them all. So yeah, I want to make this guy. And here's a look of the comic book. Now, he's kind of had different looks in the comic book. One thing that's kind of his trademark, I guess, is kind of like the wings on his helm. And then he kind of has that loincloth that kind of has that maybe like white and black spotted pattern on it. And he always has silver or gray or white on his costume. I'm not necessarily sure if my costume is going to look, exactly like this. I kind of want to take some liberties and make my own interpretation of the character, which I think is okay, because different artists, they've shared different versions of him. Like here, he's kind of done away with the white loincloth with the spots, and he still retains the wings on his helm, but his armored pieces are a lot more armored as opposed to being just like, leather or fur. So I think my version of the character might lean a little bit more towards something like this. And before we go into the figure design, let's talk a little bit about the history of the character. And here's some information I found on the Warlord from Wikipedia. So, the Warlord is a sword and sorcery character appearing in American comic books, published by DC Comics. Created by writer-artist Mike Grell, he debuted in the first issue special number 8, November 1975. So the character Travis Morgan, it says here he obtains the name Warlord as he fights for the freedom of the people of Skartaris. So it says here that Travis Morgan was a Vietnam War vet. He's a pilot. And he passed through a hole in the Earth's crust while flying over the North Pole in 1969. And then he landed in the underground world of Skataris. And it's a place strongly reminiscent of Edgar Rice Burroughs' Pelakadar, if I'm saying that correctly. So it sounds like this is a dude. He was a vet. He was a pilot. And maybe he crossed into some like other dimension or some world inside of the Earth. You know, if you're like one of those conspiracy theorists that believes in like, you know, one of those hidden worlds underneath the Earth's crust, maybe that this sounds like this kind of falls into that. So he sounds pretty cool. And they talk a little bit about the toy line here. So yeah, I really kind of want to make this guy. So essentially my goal is to make the Warlord as he might appear if he was in the Masters of the Universe Origins line. But I'm thinking I kind of want to embellish him a little bit more. I kind of want to add a little bit more detail. Like I know I kind of want him to fit into these weird proportions so he looks a little bit more squat like the Masters of the Universe figures. So what I'm thinking of, I'm going to use... I have this extra Zodak figure here. I want to use Zodak as the base. Let's remove his head first. So we're not going to use his head, of course. I want to use his body. I want to see what his body looks like. I was thinking that maybe I could just use like the standard He-Man body, especially since He-Man's so readily available at the stores. But I like this figure because his body's a little bit more unique in that he has that like hairy body. And I kind of want to give my Warlord a hairy body with a hairy chest. I don't know. I think he's a little bit more grislier that way, and he just looks more manly. Let's see what it looks like. Yeah, so he kind of has more of a hairier chest, which I want on my Warlord. In keeping with the theme of the white. Now, my Warlord, he might not have that white loincloth. And I kind of want to refrain from using any paint on this custom unless I really need to. So this guy kind of has a white belt and a gray fur bikini kind of deal. So that kind of, you know, checks off those kind of like marks in terms of the Warlord's costume. Because Warlord does have some gray and he does have some white on it. So I can get away with using this. The boots, I don't want to use these boots. These are those webbed feet. So we're going to do away with the boots. And we have his arms here. Now, I could use these arms. The only issue I have with them is that Zodak's arms has kind of like those weird webbed fins on them. So I might have to... I have an extra Masters of the Universe Origins bodies floating around somewhere in the house. I could probably just swap those 4 arms out. But, I don't know. Part of me's thinking I might try using these. I might make some modifications to the 4 arms. And just kind of do away the best I can of these fins. Now let's take the hands off for now. See what it looks like. Alright, so I'm thinking I might just trim the arms and lose the fins, if that's possible. We'll see. Alright, so in terms of his head... Warlord has a very specific head. He has a trademark kind of helm, and there's wings on the side, and he has a white beard. So one thing that prompted me to want to make this figure is that I actually have a head that might be passable for Warlord. And it's this. This is the Hasbro Marvel Avengers Thor, and it's from their Gamerverse budget line of action figures. So this was from a $10 figure. I had an extra one of these, and basically I had another Thor figure, and that broke. And I did a head swap, and then when I swapped out heads, I had this as an extra head. And the minute I saw this head, I'm like, you know what? I could paint the beard white and paint the wings white, and then bam, I have the Warlord. I just need a body. So then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, you know what I could do? I could make a He-Man figure of the Warlord, or Masters of the Universe figure of the Warlord, and just, you know, slap that on there. So my thought is, all right, you know, guy with a helmet with wings, guy with a helmet and wings. All I need to do is repaint the beard white, repaint the wings white, and find a way to plug this head onto this body. And then I'll have the Warlord. So we're kind of there. And now we have to talk about what I'm going to do for his, like, the rest of them, like his hands and his legs. So as I mentioned previously, my version of the Warlord is good. He's not going to look like the classic one. It's not going to look like this toy at all. So this is gone. He's going to kind of look like maybe a weird mix between these two versions. So I want to create a version of the Warlord that's going to kind of look like somewhere like in between this guy and this guy. So what am I going to do in terms about creating these armor pieces? Well, I was going through some of my action figures in my boxes and stuff, and I know there's a couple figures that were broken, and one of them was Medieval Spawn. And here's what's left of Medieval Spawn. This was a McFarlane toy. I believe it came out maybe the late 90s, early 2000s. And here's what's left of them. So Medieval Spawn, this was a dude. He actually had, like, I think 4 arms. And here's his head. He's kind of like a hooded executioner. And his head plugged into here. And then he had 4 arms. I don't know, one of the arms is missing. I think one of the arms I used to, like, repair a Hordak figure. So if you go back and watch my videos, I do a Hordak figure review, and one of the Hordak figures I have, actually, he has an arm that was borrowed from this guy. So my thought was, alright, so Warlord's going to need armor. What I could do is, so he needs boots. I'll perform some sort of surgery and take these armored boots and place them onto this figure. And what's nice is that these boots actually have ankle articulation. So I might have to make some modifications just so I could give these boots a little bit more bend to them. But I think it's good enough. Maybe. I gotta figure out too how much leg I'll need. Like if I cut too high, it'll make this figure too tall, and it'll completely change the proportions, and he won't be as squat as the He-Man figures are. But I don't know. I'll see. I might want to maybe I will make him taller. I don't know yet. So yeah, so we'll use these boots on this guy. I'll cut them off here. I'll drill out a socket, and then I'll use these pegs and we'll plug them in. Hopefully that'll work, fingers crossed. In terms of his arms, what do I got here? I have two right arms and one left arm. So I kind of want to incorporate, he has this cool like armored gauntlet. I'm kind of thinking maybe I could cut it off and maybe trim this forearm down and then maybe glue or find a way to mount this in, permanently onto here. I think that would work. Possibly. Not 100% sure yet. This is all kind of a work in progress. I don't really know what this figure is going to look like until I actually do it. I don't know how successful I'll be. For all I know, I might end up ruining this figure. So yeah, so far, I will take the boots from this guy. I mean, there's some cool detail. If my camera's catching it, there's straps, there's leather, there's studs, there's rivets, chains. Really detailed. Much more than a normal Masters of the Universe figure, but I don't really care. I just want something that's going to look badass in the end. For his forearms and gauntlets and hands, we might just perform surgery and transplant these onto here. As I stated earlier, we'll find a way to get the head to fix onto the neck. What I'm thinking of is I'll have to remove this ball joint, and I have this screw here, and the top of the screw, the head of the screw, it's wide enough that I could take the socket of this head and plug it in. I have to warm this up first, but then I'll plug in, it'll be nice and snug. And the nice thing with this being a screw is I could probably adjust the height of how tall I want the neck. So if I want this to sit a little bit deeper, I could probably do that. In terms of his, what else is there? So this guy has some more body armor on his chest. And I could, hypothetically speaking, I could maybe modify, like, one of these He-Man Masters of the Universe Origins body armor deals, but it wouldn't fall in line aesthetically with what I'm doing with the arms and boots. So I kind of want to retain that level of detail. So I found this piece. I don't know what this is. It's from one of the McFarlane figures. It's kind of a pliable plastic. I'm thinking I could heat it up, soften it even more, and find a way to mount it over here. And then I have these pieces too. I believe these are from another McFarlane figure, and I could adorn these skulls and chains on his body to give it more detail. And I found more chains I could probably throw on somewhere else. In terms of weapons, I have an axe. No, this is an axe. This is a sword. I want to say this is from the McFarlane. It might have been like I want to say like a Zeus figure, maybe. There was a line of McFarlane figures from the late 90s, early 2000s where it was like, I think they're like mythological characters. And I want to say one of them was like Zeus. And I think this was his sword. But it's a cool sword. It looks awesome. And I could give my Warlord that sword. And it kind of fits in this hand all right. And I have this I found this broken axe. It's missing its handle, but I found this piece of like McFarlane. It's like a wood board or something. It's like a 2x4, and I think this went with like a Spawn playset. And I figured I could just drill out a hole here, throw in a paper clip, drill out a hole here, and just connect the two and glue them. And then I could give him an axe, so he can have an axe also. So if you can imagine what we're doing, if you use your imagination, here's his head. We'll use these for his hands somehow, or at least his forearms, and his boots, his sword, and we'll find a way to cobble some armor on him. So yeah, that's going to be my Warlord figure. Ideally, I'd like to document this process as I'm making it as I go along, but I think you're talking to a guy who has a hard enough time trying to pat his head and rub his belly, so I'm probably just gonna like do this off camera, and then when we come back, hopefully it'll be the completed piece, and I could talk more in detail about how I created it. So I'll see you in a second, hopefully with the completed piece. All right, I'll be right back. Okay, here we are with my completed custom Remco inspired Masters of the Universe Origins Warlord figure. And it came out, I'd say, roughly what I had in mind. So, to recap what I did here, the head was initially from a Hasbro Marvel Avengers Gamerverse Thor. It was an extra head I had, and since he had the beard and the wings on the helm, I thought it was perfect for using as a Warlord head. So what I had what I had to do here is I repainted the wings white because they were initially kind of like this gunmetal gray. I painted the beard kind of like grayish off-white. I didn't want it to be too bright of a white. Next, I added this kind of like shoulder pauldron. I don't know what this piece was initially. It was from a previous McFarlane figure from years ago. I want to say it was from it was like either like a goblin or an orc 2-pack, and it came with this like steed that the goblin rode on top of. And I believe this might have been an armor piece on that, which broke off. But I reshaped it and curved it so it could conform to his shoulder and his chest. And I notched it out on both the front and back and threaded this chain through it, which I got from a McFarlane figure also. I want to say I got it from the McFarlane Zeus figure. and that chain had these kind of like small animal skulls on it, and I thought it'd look perfect. Next, we're moving on to the forearms and the gauntlets. So this was kind of tricky. These arms were from a McFarlane Spawn figure. I think initially I said they were a medieval Spawn figure, but I could be wrong. I think it might have been like maybe like Executioner Spawn, if that's the correct name of it. So what I did was I cut off the gauntlets or the forearms on that Spawn figure, and it couldn't be a straight cut towards the back of the cuff because the gauntlet was kind of like at an angle. So what I had to do was I cut the gauntlet off at an angle, and then for the Masters of the Universe forearm, I cut that off on a somewhat matching angle, and then glued the two pieces together with I want to say Loctite liquid super glue, and it's a pretty. The glue seems like it melded the pieces pretty well together. I think. I mean, I didn't try. I'm sure if I forced it and tried snapping in half, it'd break. But for now, it seems like the glue is pretty sturdy. I was about to pin it with a safety pin, but I didn't feel like that was necessary for what I want to do with this figure. Likewise, for the other forearm, I did the same thing. I cut the gauntlet off the Spawn figure, and then I tried to make a corresponding cut on the Masters of the Universe forearm and glued the pieces together. And these forearms from the Spawn figures are nice because they still have wrist articulation. And I believe this sword was from that McFarlane Zeus figure also. Alright, so during the video early on, I said that I wasn't going to do the loincloth, but the character seemed so bare without it. I think that's one of his trademark pieces. Is this kind of like weird zebra print, leopard print loincloth. So I had a thin piece of like, I think this is like fake leather or vinyl or something. And I painted on the pattern, and I think I sealed it with a matte finish, just so it wouldn't be as glossy or shiny. And it came out alright. But I do think I take it. I do take it back. I think it really was necessary to have this here, just so I better identify this as being Warlord, because I didn't think the white beard and the wings were enough. He kind of really needed this. And lastly, we come to the legs. And these legs were from the McFarlane Spawn figure I used also. It was pretty easy. I just cut a straight cut. I tried to get the boots the same height as the Masters of the Universe figure one. And I drilled out a hole on both of these boots. And the stock Masters of the Universe leg has a peg. And I just kind of, plug this in. And yeah, this is pretty much my completed custom Masters of the Universe Origins Remco inspired Warlord figure. Alright, so let's compare some of the photos. So this is the photo. I mean, I've seen this figure online on eBay and some of the Remco fan websites and Masters of the Universe fan websites. And it's when I saw this, it's like I'm like, this is a kind of a figure I kind of want, but it's kind of pricey, and I figured, let's make my own custom. So this is kind of like my modern take on this toy, using the Origins body. But as I've stated previously, I want to take some, embellishments and give it a little bit more detail than something that's bare minimum as this. And the nice thing with McFarlane toys is that their sculpts and their figures are so detailed, and they're very, they're adorned with so much stuff on them. Like this guy has like a crazy gauntlet with a Wolverine inspired claws. The sculpting on it's really detailed. And I felt the aesthetic for everything just kind of flowed well. The Marvel Avengers helm I had for this Thor figure, it was kind of a gunmetal gray. And even though it's not a perfect color match for the shoulder and gauntlet pieces, it's close enough. And when you take into account that there's even some gold trim in here, there's gold here on the gauntlets, it just seemed like a, match made in heaven, and everything kind of came well together. The head's slightly smaller than a Origins figure head, but I think it's alright. It kind of like brings the proportions a little bit more, not necessarily realistic, but it's not as cartoony. I didn't have to repaint the flesh tone. It's not a perfect match, but from a distance, it's close enough, and I don't really mind. Anytime I can make a custom, and the less I paint and the more stock it looks, the better. I really want a figure that looks like it could be almost retail. And, you know, when you paint a custom, sometimes, you know, you see the paint strokes and it just doesn't match or flow with the rest of the figure. But, you know, the less paint I can add, the better, I feel. And the skulls are a nice touch. Here's another image I found online of Warlord, another depiction of him. I want to say I think this might be a more modern take versus this one. Like, this is like OG, old school Warlord. If I could have added, if I could have done anything different with this guy, is maybe I would have given him some white towards the top of the boots, because I kind of feel it needs more white on here just to balance out the white that's going on top of his head and his torso. Ideally, I'd love to have, you know, like with the Masters of the Universe figures, they kind of have like the furry boot tops as it is. You know, maybe I could have found a way to like cobble that together with this. I mean, who knows? I might go back and make changes, or I might try my hand at making another Warlord figure. But for now, I think this was successful. Is it perfect? No, but for what it is and what I wanted, it kind of fits the bill. I had a lot of fun making this. This was really kind of like make it up as I go along. I didn't really have an idea of what this would look like until I actually put it together. And with a custom like this, there's so many challenges in terms of, like, you know, I'm heavily modifying this figure by cutting off pieces, and that broken spawn figure I was using to, you know, get the legs and the arms. You know, you just have to make sure that stuff's gonna be compatible. Like, I was very fortunate that these boots were kind of like, the legs weren't wider than the calf muscles on this. It seemed like it was a good match. Same with the forearms. There's some gaps here. It's not like a perfect flush fit, as you can see here where the gauntlet meets the forearm, but it's good enough. And this is more of a display piece. What I plan on doing next is I'm going to make a custom package for this. I haven't decided if I want to go more of the Masters of Universe Origins route, or do something that's a little bit more inspired by the original Remco design, like this. I do know, though, that the package I want to create, a must for me is it has to have a bubble that's removable, just because I would like to be able to take this figure out from time to time. I don't want to permanently affix it to a card. So I think that'll be the next video. I'll come back, we'll revisit this after I'm done making a custom package for it. And maybe then I could do a more proper reveal or unveiling of this guy with, I don't know, maybe like a photo gallery or something. But yeah, this is my custom Masters of the Universe Origins Remco inspired DC Warlord. The original figure, it's very popular in the collector circles, and you know, I'm never gonna get one, so I thought I'd just take a stab at making my own, and here we are. And as I've stated previously, customizing is a very fun thing. If there's a character you're very fond of, whether it's a character from a video game, a comic book, or a movie or TV show, and if it doesn't exist in figure form, you know, take a risk and try making one for yourself. It always helps to find a figure where what you can use as a base, it closely resembles your finished product, or if you can find bits and pieces from different figures and finding a way to incorporate them together, you know, that works also. So once again, my name is Lou. Thank you very much for stopping by and checking out this video. This won't be the last you'll see of my Warlord. Hopefully in the near future I'll have a video once I finish the completed package. So until then, I'll see you soon. Take care.